Our top focus at noon, India has hit back at Pakistan after it raised the Kashmir bogey at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. Exposing Pakistan at the UNHRC, India raised the issue of atrocities in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Balochistan. At the 33rd United Nations Human Rights Council meet, India's permanent representatives set the record straight on Pakistan's illegal occupation of parts of Jammu and Kashmir. India also raised Pakistan's role in exporting terrorism to the valley.
Mr. President, we have noted the reference to the High Commissioner's statement to the situation in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. The whole state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. Pakistan remains an illegal occupation of a part of our territory. The two cannot and should not be equated. The neutrality of the phrase Indian administered Kashmir is therefore artificial. Furthermore, the state of Jammu and Kashmir has an elected democratic government that represents all sections of the people, unlike the situation in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Mr. President, the current violence in Jammu and Kashmir has been choreographed from across our borders since the death of a known terrorist belonging to an internationally proscribed terrorist organization in police action in July this year. We have shared evidence of terrorists who came across the border with instructions to target our security forces by mingling with protesting crowds and using human shields. Terrorism, I would emphasize, is the most egregious violation of human rights. Jammu and Kashmir has started to move towards normalcy after sustained and system-wide efforts by both central and state governments, including the exercise of maximum restraint by our security forces, 7,000 of whom have sustained injuries till date. India's robust democratic institutions and processes have sufficient tools for redressal of grievances, and they are already engaged with this issue across the entire democratic political spectrum. The protection and promotion of human rights on a sustained basis can be best achieved through constructive dialogue and cooperation. States are the primary bearers of responsibility in this regards. Countries often have unique national circumstances, and it is important to invest trust in their efforts. Mr. President, India has been appreciative of the High Commissioner's efforts at improving efficiency and streamlining OSCHR's work. However, we remain concerned at persisting ambiguities in OHCHR governance and administrative arrangements. High Commissioner's proposed change initiative requires more clarity. A detailed response to ACABQ's queries in this regard would be a good place to start. Finally, allow me to renew our commitment to extend full cooperation to the High Commissioner and OHCHR for the meaningful and productive discharge of his mandate.
Let's get a word from our executive editor Gaurav Sawant, who's with us live from our newsroom this afternoon. Gaurav, India taking a very clear stance at the United Nations Human Rights Council, saying that Pakistan is not just sending terrorists into Kashmir, creating trouble for locals, but is also illegally occupied. Is this also the first time that India has raised the issue of Balochistan at the UN?
Spot on there, Simi. India upping the ante and India completely exposing Pakistan, setting the record straight that there cannot be equivalence between India's Kashmir and the part of Kashmir that Pakistan illegally occupies, because India is a democracy, and what you see in Pakistan are atrocities on people not just in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, but also in Balochistan. And India is systematically detailing the atrocities by Pakistan in Balochistan, including the use of F-16 aircraft and heavy artillery against their own people, against people in Pakistan. So this false equivalence that is being drawn is incorrect, and India is saying it in as many words, Simi.
Right, and Gaurav, would you say there is a clear shift in India's policy as far as Pakistan is concerned? So far, we've only seen Pakistan raising the Kashmir issue before the UN, but India so far has never been on the offensive so much.
Spot on once again. Now, what India is saying is Pakistan raises the Kashmir bogey each time. India is also telling the UN that it's because of Pakistan's obnoxious track record when it comes to human rights that it's not a part of the council. And the fact that India has a very robust mechanism to address all issues, whether it's an elected government, whether it's an independent judiciary, whether it's the National Human Rights Commission or an independent media. So there is no requirement for any outside agency to come and look at what's happening in India, in Jammu and Kashmir. Whereas in Pakistan, you have an authoritarian state that does not believe in democracy, that tramples over rights of its own people under the jackboots of their army, and also the use of F-16 fighter jets. You know, there is objection to India using pellet guns on a murderous mob, but the world is silent when Pakistan uses F-16 fighter jets. That's a weapon of war in Baluchistan or in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or uses heavy artillery and mortars against their own people. So India is now exposing Pakistan completely at multiple fora, Simi.
Absolutely. India also highlighting how, as Gaurav pointed out, weapons of war are being used by the Pakistani government against its own people. Gaurav, another question to you. I want to understand this properly. You're seeing that there is a clear shift in India's policy as far as the UN is concerned. Even as India raises this issue before the United Nations Human Rights Commission, it has dismissed a request by the UN for a ground visit by UN officers of Kashmir following Nawaz Sharif's request for a ground report.
Simi, India has made it very clear to the United Nations Council that India is a democracy. There's an elected government across the country. There's an elected government in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. There is an independent judiciary. There is the National Human Rights Commission. In case there are any queries or in case there are any issues, there is a robust grievance redressal mechanism available within the country, which is not the case in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is not the case in Gilgit-Baltistan, again a part of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir called northern areas, and which is not the case in Baluchistan. So India is shifting the world focus to where United Nations Council, Human Rights Council is genuinely required to focus attention, and dismissing Pakistan's bogey on what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. So there is a clear shift, as you rightly pointed out, in India's stand. It's a much more aggressive stance that India has adopted, and not just at the United Nations Human Rights Council, but at multiple international fora. Not just Indians, but in the days to come, you'll notice Afghanistan will raise issues of Pakistan's atrocities. Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani did that in Delhi yesterday. He's expected to do more. Bangladesh is raising it. Other countries in the region will raise Pakistan-sponsored terror, because that is the big issue here. Pakistan-sponsored terror in the region.
Gaurav, stay on with us.